Welcome back to the Startup Show. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show, we have Christoph Guger. He's at g.tec Medical Engineering. Welcome, Dr. Guger.
Thank you very much for having me
Yeah.
and g.tec here in the podcast.
Yeah. So this is very interesting. So it's a brain-computer interface. That sounds like a dream come true for me. What are you guys building?
So we started like 25 years ago to build brain-computer interfaces. This means we can measure brain activity, EEG, concretely electroencephalogram, and the brain-computer interface is analyzing brain waves, and then we can control other devices, robotic devices, functional electrical stimulation, computer games, or whatever. It is used for gaming, medical applications, for neuroscience, of course, or just to develop fantastic new robotic or AI devices.
How has the industry changed in the past few years? It sounds like you've been around for 25 years, and that suggests that you've always had something to build. What does the industry look like right now?
So 25 years ago, brain-computer interfaces were developed to control computer cursors on a screen. So people wanted to just have computer control, and their idea was for completely locked-in patients to give them a communication device. And then we developed spelling devices. So this allowed amyotrophic lateral sclerosis patient, locked-in patients to communicate just with brain waves. And of course, then it was used for a lot of different neuroscience experiments to figure out a little bit more about the brain. And about 10 years ago, we started with medical applications. And nowadays, we are using it for stroke patients, for neurorehabilitation to make them better. So one of our products is called Recoverix. In this case, we take a stroke patient, put on EEG electrodes on the brain, and then we instruct the patient to imagine left-hand movement, right-hand movement, leg movements. The brain-computer interface is analyzing the brain waves, and when the person is activating the brain, then we trigger a functional electrical stimulation of the muscle so that the hand is really moving. And you have to imagine that these people were maybe paralyzed for a couple of years, and suddenly the hand moves again when they imagine the movement. And this leads to a lot of motivation. And we are training these people for 45 minutes in 25 sessions. So they are coming back 25 times. And at the end, they have much better motoric control. So they can move hands, legs much better. They can walk faster, do more. And this is, of course, exactly what we want to achieve. And we figured out that this even works 10, 20 or 30 years after the stroke. So normally neurologists tell patients after 1 year there's no progress anymore. But it's not the case here. So if they participate in the 25 training sessions, we can say that basically everybody gets better. So the only reason for not improving is to have another neurological event, like another stroke or something like that. But beside that, these people feel much better afterwards. And we are using also brain-computer interface for people with disorders of consciousness. So they had a traumatic brain accident, car accident, for example, and then they're lying in a bed, they cannot communicate, and nobody knows if they have awareness. With the brain-computer interface, we can test this very quickly. So we can ask the patients a couple of questions where we know the answer normally, and then they can answer yes and no with the brain-computer interface, only with brain waves, without moving. And if they answer most of the questions correctly, then we have a very objective proof that these people have command following. This is, of course, changing everything for them because they were maybe, in the hospital for a couple of years and nobody knew if they understand anything. And after a few minutes, we know. Then it's much more motivating for the physician or for the family to visit and to do something.
So that's fascinating. So, I think the traditional view of human brain interface, I suppose, is sort of what you're talking about, sort of like a locked-in person. What are the more commercial aspects of this? When would I be using something like this?
So we have different products already on the market for several years. When I come back to Recoverix, then we sell Recoverix as a medical product to hospitals and rehabilitation centers. So they can just use it in the hospital. So a patient has a stroke, goes to the hospital, and they can already provide the treatment. After approximately 8 days, they are released, and later on they come to a rehabilitation center. And then they can use Recoverix again to make the patient better. And normally after 2 months, around the world, people are released from public rehabilitation. And then they are on their own and they're desperate because they want to improve again. And that's the reason why we developed a franchise system for Recoverix. And in this case, a businessman, a therapist, a medical doctor, whoever, can just get the equipment into his office, or he can establish a recovery center, and he can or she can provide the treatment for these patients on an ambulatory case. So these patients are just passing by for an hour, get the treatment, and after 25 sessions, they are much better.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that we are already running in more than 20 countries. And this is also very important because it's a private rehabilitation, so we can build it up with our own speed. So we don't have to wait for the public sector and big hospitals to follow. So private sector business is always much more reactive and faster.
Will there ever be a case where, I don't know, I'm able to communicate with my phone just by thinking about it? Something less medical?
So we have also end user products. This is our Unicorn series. It's much cheaper. It's a consumer product. This is something that we use for plenty of different applications. So you can control, for example, a cell phone. You can fly a drone and control it. You can control different robotic devices, or you can play computer games, which is a lot of fun. So we combine, for example, joystick and keyboard control. So these shooting games, of course, are perfectly controlled with a
Wow.
joystick or the keyboard, but we add the brain-computer interface so that you can only do certain tasks with the brain-computer interface. For example, to open a hidden door. So with the keyboard or joystick, you cannot do it, but with the BCI, you are able to open it, or you can, control a smash hammer in Fortnite with the brain-computer interface, and then it develops a superpower. So by combining brain control with keyboard control, it's producing a lot of fun and good experience for users.
What's the granularity of this interface? You mentioned before that people were able to pick words and they were able to pick yes and no, that sort of thing. Is there the ability to like think about a letter and have it show up?
This is what we do for the communication. So we show different letters, and the logged in person, or also a healthy one, can just select a letter from words and sentences. So this is just a standard communication that we allow with brain-computer interfacing. But this is also something that you can, as a healthy person, do with a keyboard. Much more interesting is to extract something that's normally hidden, and you're not aware of. So we have also a picture sorter, for example. So we are presenting different images of people, of mountains, of speeches, whatever you like, for a very brief moment to users. So they are just viewing the different images for 100 milliseconds, and in the background, the brain-computer interface is analyzing the brain response. And afterwards, you get the ranking of the most important images for your brain. And this is always fascinating because it's faster than you are aware of. And we called it Blondie check, politically incorrect, because at the beginning we tested it with male university students, and then always the blonde girls were ranking first. So this was pretty systematic, and we had a
Interesting.
lot of fun about it. But you can also use it for serious applications. If you put in logos of different manufacturers, for example, you can figure out which logo works best. And then it can also get very interesting. So we mixed, for example, in these picture sets, pictures of the mother and of the girlfriend. And suddenly the mother ranked better than the girlfriend. Suddenly it gets more embarrassing. So you can extract hidden information that you want to figure out.
Interesting. Are there any privacy implications here? Are you worried about any privacy implications?
People are using these brain responses like with the picture ranking software also for criminals. So you can investigate, for example, if they're still reacting to certain images, for example, children, if there was some crime and violent events involved. And so you can screen them when they're in prison. And if they are still reacting on certain images, then they are not released, for example, And in this case, brain-computer interface technology is also moving more into security aspects.
Is AI made this easier for you in terms of pattern recognition?
This is what you need for extracting EEG patterns, because for the human eye they look like random noise. So you need machine learning, pattern recognition, AI to just signal processing to make sense of it. And this is also an important step in the recent years, so that computers got so good. And also cell phones and HMDs got so good that they can do all the processing. So nowadays we can stream EEG data from an EEG headset directly into a MetaQuest, and the MetaQuest is doing all the processing, so we can just
Wow.
play computer games on the HMD. So it's very
Oh,
slim, inexpensive. So 5 years ago, this was impossible.
yeah, almost impossible. All right, that's amazing. So the website is g.tec, g.tec.at. Uh,
Correct.
and the product, the consumer product is the unicorn, right? So that's something that folks can pick up and play with, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, this has been honestly fascinating. Christoph, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you for having
All
me.
right. I'm John Biggs. This has been the Startup Show. We'll see you next episode.